Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever hour of the day you are tuning in. This is Tasemere, host of the Blackout live from New York. Super excited to be with you guys today. As usual, I'm going to just start off with a little background on what this segment is about, and then we're going to jump right in. The Blackout Live from New York with me, your host, Tasemere's purpose is to celebrate Black folks across the diaspora and to have an open dialogue about Black economics, how we reimagine trends in business, and explore the magic that we have. I think I have a tad bit of a delay, so just calling that what it is right now. Feel free to talk to me in the comments. Love to hear what you guys are saying. So I wanted to start off with something a tad bit different, going back to the roots of what the show is about, and give you guys some news that I have curated for you today. So I will be sharing my screen. So let me get that going right now. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at today while this populates is really a story that I just found out about, and I wasn't sure if you guys also knew about it. But Oscarville in Georgia is a town that was built right after Reconstruction, and it has a very fascinating history. So I want us to take a look at what it is, and I'm hoping you guys can see and hopefully hear once the buffer stops doing what it's doing. But while we're waiting for that, I'll just give some context. Man, an error happened. Not sure what that is. Waiting to see what I can do about that. But let me just give you guys some history about what went down here while I'm waiting to get this video up and running. This was basically post-slavery, right after, Black folks were, quote unquote, freed from being enslaved. There was a town that was created, like most places. Black people started creating their own towns, had their own commerce that was going on, and thriving neighborhoods with their own schools and their own churches. And what happened was some night riders, which were some white folks, came into the town and started just destroying it and running people out of the town. They then took these Black folks' land because they had just, settled wherever they settled. And there are still some descendants from this town whose family had been run out about 3 or 4 decades prior. And they are talking about their experiences and the folk history that goes along with what has happened. A lot of the people that left or fled from Oscarville went and settled in, I think it was Greensville, and it was super fascinating because they were farmers, they tended the land, which is just like an amazing story. So I'm hoping to get this up for you guys to be able to take part in this experience. But if this video doesn't start playing, we will head over to another clip and take it from there. So just give me one moment while I am attempting to get this started here. It always happens, always the good stuff that you want to share and talk about, you have a challenging time pulling it up. But you can definitely go on YouTube and research it as I'm waiting for the YouTube video to become available. We will just for the moment, put a pin in this because I think that this is very important for everyone to know, not, you know, exclusive to Black folks or anything like that. Just important for us to continue to remember. Hello, how are you? Good morning to my other co-host who just had a show on earlier before my segment. I'm super excited to have you here this morning. So we're just gonna mosey on over to the next article that I had waiting for us to dive into. Oh, it is ready.
By the Army Corps of Engineers. The peaceful shores of the reservoir look like the perfect place to sit back and relax on a warm summer's day. But dip beneath the surface, and you might be surprised by what you'll find. Since the lake was formed in the 1950s to supply more water and hydroelectric energy to Atlanta, there have been 500 boating or drowning deaths, hundreds of rescues, and 27 bodies that have never been recovered. What could possibly be so dangerous about this lake? Are there hidden hazards, or are more sinister forces at play? Welcome to Intrigued Mind, and join us today as we run through the strange and haunted history of Lake Lanier. For a lake with such a terrifying, mysterious reputation, the origins of the place are equally eerie. The reservoir was first constructed in 1956 when the Army Corps of Engineers completed the Beaufort Dam on the Chattahoochee River. The intention of the lake was to manage navigation and flood control of the river. Furthermore, Lanier would supply hydroelectricity and water to the growing city of Atlanta, located just 60 miles away. The construction of Lake Lanier was plagued by problems and dark omens from the very beginning. There was a great deal of controversy, debate, and disagreement regarding virtually every aspect of Beaufort Dam's construction. Its creators could not decide its purpose, its location, nor even its name. In fact, the lake was already in construction when the title Lake Lanier was finally chosen. Before construction even began, the U.S. government purchased more than 50,000 acres of farmland. The very first piece of land to be sold.
So I wanted to show you guys that piece because that jumps forward to what we know. So as we know, you have to always go backwards to actually dig into what actually happened here with this lake. So I wanted to give you guys two different thought processes around this. And now we're going to go back to before the 1950s as that clip started with that, but there was something that happened way before then. So as we're waiting for this video to start, I wanted to just give you guys how it's important for us to do our research because people change stuff all the time, and it's important for us to understand what's actually happening here.
1,100 residents, Black residents, were ran out of the county after 2 women were raped. But let me tell you about Oscarville, Georgia. Oscarville, Georgia was a town that was mainly Black owned. Most of the residents that were ran out of Forsyth County, they took residence in Oscarville, Georgia. Now, Oscarville, Georgia was where the supposed rape of the white woman, May Crow, went down by what was described as 4 Black teenagers.
According to various accounts, 18-year-old May Crow was walking alone in the woods when she struck repeatedly with a rock, reportedly sexually assaulted and left for dead.
She was hit so hard that her eye was dislodged from her skull and left hanging. She's always punished for her.
Debbie Vermont is May Crow's grandniece. She keeps a portrait of her in her living room.
My grandmother always said that she was known to be the prettiest girl in Forsyth County.
Word of the attack spread quickly. Suspicion soon fell on a group of young African Americans. Local media condemned them, describing the trio as, quote, the fiendish, low-browed, gorilla-type Negroes. Enraged by the news, a mob immediately lynched one man. You believe that some of your distant relatives took part in this lynching?
Yes, some of them I am fairly sure they did. These were the most aggrieved and grieving, who wanted justice for what had happened to their loved one.
2 others, both teenagers, were arrested, tried, and convicted. A prominent doctor volunteered land near his home for the court-ordered execution. An estimated 5,000 people showed up to watch the hangings.
Well, my grandmother would have been 18 months old, sitting in her mother's lap.
Watching someone being lynched.
Right.
So do you believe that those 3 people, the 2 teenagers, the 1 young man in his 20s, do you believe they were innocent?
I do believe they were innocent. I do believe. And I believe it's a huge cold case that's still sitting there to try to figure out exactly who did it.
Now, this particular town had houses, stores, barns, probably churches, and a racetrack. The location of the town is now located under the popular Lake Lanier. If you look up Oscar,
So I'm not going to hold you guys too long with this, but this is a fascinating piece of history that we have to continue to uncover and examine and be objective about it. If you guys are interested in learning more about Lake Lanier and the thriving Black town that existed that is located underneath Lake Lanier, present day, and how Black folks were basically driven out of their land, their town, their neighborhood that they created, I would definitely encourage you to do some research. It's not very hard to find. You can just literally just Google Lake Lanier or Oscarville, Georgia. Super fascinating stuff. Wanted to head over to someone that most of us, I don't even want to say most of us because I don't know who will be watching. However, Condoleezza Rice is someone that I definitely remember, and I want to say most of us remember her role in politics. And she is now joining the ownership group of the Broncos. I think that this is important for us to start to pay attention to how Black folks, particularly Black women, are now taking ownership in sports and owning sports-focused teams. I think that this is super fascinating, super interesting how Black women are definitely changing the game around team ownership. As usual, I'm always interested in understanding how this is going to impact economics and what does this actually mean. I think that there's a lot for us to learn around how to go about taking part in industries where we might not actually understand everything that's going on and the different types of ownership that we can have. So definitely also, if you are interested, definitely take a look into that as well. Now I found something that was a little interesting. It has nothing to do with any of the articles that we have looked at, but there is a crab that is full of fur. And I thought that this was also equally interesting for us to look at marine life as well and how this impacts our environment. So there has been a discovery of a furry crab that wears a sponge as a hat, has been discovered in Western Australia. This is super new. They are calling it Charles Darwin around the world. Put a pin in that in case you don't know what that is. I definitely think you should go look it up. But this is super interesting to see how species are changing. I don't think that there has been any real connection to the species developing over time with global occurrences or changing in our environment. But I think it is interesting for us to take a look at this because we all need to know what is happening around the world, and we need to be a little bit more intentional about not just staying in our city, our state, or just national. it's important for us to understand how all of this might be impacting our day-to-day at some point in time. So that was just a little fun tidbit just to ease up the moment here. As we jump back into some heavy stuff, I have an article here that says 1 in 3 U.S. students attended a racially segregated public school in 2020-2021. This is interesting for us to dissect and think about because we have been fed something around, equality, access. I think that can be debatable, but it is equally important to understand what is going on. Nearly 19 million students in the U.S. or more than a third attended a public school in 2020 to 2021 school years, where at least 75% of the students were of the same race or ethnicity, according to a report released by the Government Accountability Office. This is important for us to understand as we are constantly trying to figure out what is going on with America's school systems, what's going on with the knowledge that is being given and taught, but also how do we continue to grow our community as a whole. I think it's important to think about diversity and inclusion, and in some cases, exclusion of thoughts and ideas that have been happening. And so I think it's super interesting to have these stats that nearly 75% of students were of the same race and ethnicity. This is important because I think that we also know that most of the schools, depending on where you go or where you live around the world, good morning, Rico, might also have similar demographics compared to who the principal might be, the assistant principal, the teachers. Important for us to also advocate while we are advocating for diversity and inclusion in companies. We also need to be advocating for that in our school systems if we are really truly trying to create a different kind of world for our future children, grandchildren, generational things of that nature. So I thought it was important for us to put a pin there. All of these articles, you can definitely go back and research them, think about them. The idea around this is not for me to give you my perspective about what's going on, but for you to also be able to start thinking a little bit more critically about, what's happening around the world and to encourage us to get out of our own, city, state, neighborhood, things of that nature. Moving along to something that I think is going under the radar that I think is important for us to know. It is going on over in Arizona, and it is around filming encounters with the police. Without cell phone footage, people who are met with police violence said it would be harder to hold police accountable and seek justice, which we all know that all too well. But there's also some legislation that has been passed that here it is, people who say that they have faced violence from filming police interactions are condemning a law in Arizona that will restrict recording police officers from within 18 feet of police activity. This is important for us to pay attention to. I didn't know that this was happening. I'm not going to say that I'm the, sharpest knife in the drawer and I know everything that's going on in the news, because that would be a fallacy. But I think that it's important for us to bring these topics, this information to the general public to take a look at what might be coming down the pipe. If we are no longer able to film what is going on with police activity that is happening, how do we continue to attempt to hold people accountable? I think that that might be a challenge for us. And I think that we don't know that this is happening. And if this is something that's going on in Arizona, how can this potentially influence neighboring states and or become something that is nationwide? So I think we should definitely, pay a little bit of attention to that. Now, how many people know about Malcolm X? This is something that I can say everybody should know about this. Malcolm X, one of our premier leaders in the movement for Black folks. This is important to note. The man that had been accused of murdering Malcolm X has filed a $40 million lawsuit against New York City. He has spent more than 55 years of being wrongfully blamed for this death and the damage that has happened to the culture and to the family at large. I just found out about this earlier this morning, so I was like, let me put this on the radar for us to just, put a pin, talk about it. He's definitely suing New York City, my home city, for $40 million. He spent more than 2 decades in prison and more than 55 years of being wrongfully blamed. And he's saying that it's caused immense and irreparable damage to him and his family, but it also has caused damage to Malcolm X's family, the culture at large, history, so on and so forth. I think we should definitely follow this a little bit more. So these are just articles that I have curated for us today, just to become thought-provoking, maybe some conversations that we can have later on this week. So you can put a pin in that too. Philadelphia designates the city's first Black historic district after year-long push. And so this is leading me into my urban studies, urban planning brain of the historic relevance of, making a district have a historic designation. This is important because this will help to solidify the history in this neighborhood, whether it's one block or a few blocks. This will definitely, from my experience, increase travel here with people wanting to understand what's happened. Tourism will probably go up. Property rates might go up, but this might also have an impact on, what kind of buildings can be built in this district, what they will look like, how they will feel, how does this draw into the greater city's, economic pool and or policies that come from this. So this neighborhood has been dubbed Black Doctors Row because of its significance. And it is on a main street of Philadelphia's Black elite. Elijah, are you adding to this story here from next door, meaning right across from me? I think Eli is trying to come back into the fold here. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But I think that this is equally exciting to also understand. Good morning, Marsha. My co-hosts in this whole platform are showing up today. Good morning. How are you? So I wanted to just, share that information with you guys this morning. And then I have about 3 more articles left to share. In Washington, D.C., as we move along over to that part of the country, we have a new trailblazing statue that is on the U.S. Capitol that has replaced a Confederate general that I think is important for us to note. A few years ago, there have been different groups that have been pushing to take down certain statues of leaders, we'll just say it like that to be politically correct, and trying to really advocate for replacing them with other folks. And so this is one statue that you guys can definitely take a look at. She is definitely now at the Capitol as the first Black person. So now not just a woman, but the first Black person to be recognized by the Capitol's statuary hall. I think that this is important. I think you guys should take a look at her accomplishments and her impact to the U.S. as a civil rights leader and trailblazing educator. So wanted to just put a note there as we move along to something a little bit more light-ish in a way, which is TikTok. And I'm just gonna give my opinion on this right now. I know that we live in a digital age where everybody wants to do whatever they want to do on these different platforms because this is, their life. However, or in addition to that, when you hold a certain kind of status in society, you have to understand that everything is up for grabs for people to talk about and maybe criticize. And so trying to work when you are a lawmaker might be problematic for you. You might want to twerk when cameras are off. You might not want to twerk and then post it and want to say, this is just you as a person. We have been seeing that, teachers, lawmakers, politicians, and the like are being scrutinized heavily about, their profession seen as one way, and then, adjacent to that, what they are doing on different social media platforms. And I think that when you hold a certain kind of status, as I said, in the community, it is expected that you have a certain kind of lifestyle and that you are presenting yourself in a particular kind of manner. And when that doesn't happen, you get criticized, and you make it a lot easier if you are posting the evidence to, incriminate yourself. So maybe, you shouldn't twerk and post it on TikTok. Maybe that's something that you should just, make sure no phones or cameras are around, especially your camera isn't the one that is recording it. Just saying, that's my opinion. You could twerk whenever you want, but you might not want to post it up because they're going to talk about you. You heard that from me. Now going into our last article to review for today. I think I had an article that I wanted to bring up. If you guys are wondering where I am getting some of these articles from, I basically, search different types of news assets or outlets. This is one of them, NBC Black, that I found a lot of the articles in the latter part. You can also see there's like tons more here. This is where I found this one here. But it is a great resource in addition to our, news outlet, which is where I'm bringing this to you from. Today, you should definitely take a look at how you're getting your news and what is going on with you today. I wanted to take a moment to really share something that was shared with me yesterday, and it has resonated so deeply with me. And these are not my own thoughts. It was shared with me. I was discussing entrepreneurship with a dear friend, Wanda German, and we were talking about why everyone doesn't move on certain ideas that they have. And, I was sharing my experience where I feel that as an entrepreneur, one of my strengths is that I have an idea, a concept, and then I want to test it out. But what I have realized is that maybe some of my counterparts and, you know, people newer to the entrepreneurial world, they have ideas and they kind of like sit on them for a really long time and never test them out. And she basically told me, you know, something that we have to consider is that sometimes people just like to dream and they don't want the dream to become a reality because maybe it's not going to go the way that they want it to go. And so a question that we should ask ourselves are, do we want to be a dreamer or do we want to be a doer? And that really resonated with me because there is no right or wrong answer to that, but it is accountability question of sometimes we just like the idea of the dream, and that might be okay. And other times we like to try to make the dream become a reality, and that is also okay. In this instance, I will just peg myself as a doer of dreams. And so I think that this is super, super interesting thought that I wanted to just leave there in the ethers for you to think about. I am here every Saturday, 10:15. My castmates and you know, my network mates have shows Monday through Sunday. As I said, there's someone that actually has a show right before me, and she's here. And she has a totally different type of topic. And the best thing about this network is that there are so many different folks doing so many different types of shows and bringing different types of resources to the masses. You can definitely find a host that fits your fancy. Later on today, around 12, we have Dear Black Girl that's coming on. Super excited for them. And then at 6 o'clock, we have Street Resources. I think that's the name of the show that is being aired from, I always mess it up. I always say Tampa or Miami. I'm not going to mess up the actual city, so I'll say the state, Florida, because I don't want to mess up my team members' location because it's early for me. I still haven't even eaten breakfast yet. So I'm good with that. I'm gonna ciao, peace out. Definitely go and look up some of those articles that I shared this morning. Super, super fascinating. Maybe just have a dialogue about the different perspectives that you can think about when you are debating, you know, the relevancy and or the actions that are taking place. Until next time, I will talk to you soon and see you back here next week. Ciao.